Hello, everybody. This is Jess from 3D Learning Experts, and you're listening to the LD Experts Podcast, the show for busy parents who want to help their kids with learning disabilities, or as I like to say, learning differences, go from surviving to thriving. Hi, everybody. Today I am with Michelle Reed Harris, and we are in for a treat because she is an expert in so many things, but mostly her expertise is in educational advocacy. And she has written several training courses specifically for parents to help them learn how to navigate through IEPs, 504s, and so much more. So I am so excited to have Michelle here with us today. Please welcome Michelle. Thank you, Michelle, for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here. I appreciate it. I am thrilled to be here. I am the executive director of PACEN. It's the Parent Alliance for Students with Exceptional Needs. And you can find us at PACEN, PASEN.org. And that's where we do a lot of the work that we do. We offer low-cost advocacy services to families, along with we run a group on Facebook. So it's IEP/504 support and assistance. And you'll see our logo on that group. And that group has about 20,000 members. So we help people nationally, and we answer questions. So all questions are held and then answered by a professional advocate or someone who's training to be an advocate. And yeah, it's going wonderfully. And that group is really to help train members, right? In how to be an advocate and be the best advocate for their child.
Yes, I'm always telling people, like, we have to be the advocates for our children until our children can be advocates for themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's critically important.
So share with our audience how you got started on this journey.
Well, that's an interesting story. So mine's a little different than maybe some because I had quadruplets. And unfortunately, we lost one of the babies that were born very premature at 13 weeks. And so I have surviving quadruplets who are 14 and will be 15 in December at this point. I can't believe it's been so long already. But my little babies, when they were born, like I knew something was off with them because I have two older children and I had babysat a lot of kids. So I knew something was different, but I didn't know what. So it took me about 3 years before I kind of nailed down exactly what was going on with them. In the end, though, my children have diagnoses of autism, ADHD, specific learning disabilities, audio processing issues, visual processing issues, orthopedic impairment. Yeah, we're kind of all over the place between the three of them.
And so I thought it was so interesting that you actually homeschool your kids.
I know, right? It's so strange.
So do you want to elaborate a little on how that happened?
Yes. So it's interesting because my husband is a public school teacher. But I wound up homeschooling my children. And part of it was we started off with the homeschooling because one of my children, he's medically complex and medically undiagnosable. We've never been able to find a suitable diagnosis to explain everything that's going on with him. And so due to that, when he was small, like by the time he was 3 and he would have entered into preschool, we found that he didn't walk, he didn't talk. And I was very uncomfortable with sending him to preschool like that because he wouldn't be able to tell me what happened to him. And then my daughter, she could speak, but she had hypoxic brain injury from before and after birth, which caused her to have aphasia. So it's an expressive, receptive language issue. And so she could speak and she understood what I was telling her, but for some reason it was just all echolalic speech. She couldn't tell me anything about her day or any original thoughts from her head. right? So again, if something happened to her, there was no way for me to know. And I don't know, I just refused to send them to school. And then we had such a bad experience with early intervention that really kind of is what not only put me off from sending them to public school, but also it sort of set me on my path to learning advocacy. Because in our early intervention days, my children were inappropriately denied services, the services were delayed. And so what we did is I was fortunate enough to go to the Disability Law Center in the state that I was in, and they happened to have a grant at the time to handle cases that were concerning early intervention. And so they took my case, which was amazing, and the lawyer took it and filed due process, and we won compensatory education. But I remember when all that happened, at the time I was like, what just happened? I know we got this compensatory education, but I don't understand like what really the attorney did. I didn't even know that that was due process at the time. Like I didn't understand anything about it. So between what happened with early intervention and then kind of what was going on with my children medically and with preschool, that I'm like, I'm not comfortable in sending them. I really need to learn more about this advocacy stuff and like how that works so that I can understand what it is that we need, and I can get the children the help that they need. And I don't know, I just enjoyed homeschooling them so much. I sort of kept them. So yes, it is odd. I'm probably one of the few educational advocates who will ever talk to that. I homeschool my children, but I am a special education advocate. And though I'm sure get the school to conform to what my children need at this point, I have found there's been another issue, which is the mental health of my children. Because that's one of the biggest problems I think most people, they don't really think about, is that the whole special education process is very slow. It takes a long time to complete. And so during that time, if your child is really suffering from mental health issues, so my son, he did do a short stint in school at 3rd grade, and he started suffering such mental health issues that he was having severe anxiety and depression that I was like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it for him to be there as we're slowly trudging through this process. So then I pulled him out at that point.
Well, I know, you also have freedom that you wouldn't have otherwise because of homeschooling.
Yeah. And that is one thing I will say I do like, because we are fortunate that we were able to use a school choice program. So we do get money from our state to purchase curriculum and to do other things. So that's great. But even before then, I still enjoy the freedom, because it is nice when you see you're doing something and your children are learning, that you're like, great, we can continue doing this. Or if you see that they're not learning well, then you're like, oh, well, I don't need to convene an IEP team meeting or wait or do anything. I have the power. I can just chuck this and now let's try something different and see how this, try it for a little while and see if that works.
Yeah.
So it's nice having that power.
Yeah, that's what I loved most about homeschooling, was I was able to create the learning environment that worked best for each of my kids.
Exactly.
Now, will you share your mission with everybody?
Yeah, so like Payson's mission is actually to advocate, to assist parents who have children with exceptional needs, whether they're gifted, like they're twice exceptional, or they have learning disabilities. And, the organization at Payson also believes in school choice, which is unusual. I think for most organizations, we are pro school choice, because, we believe that, as a parent, that is the right educational setting for your child when your child is happy and they're learning. If they're happy and they're learning, then that's the right place for them. Whether that's homeschooling, private school, charter school, public school, it makes no difference, right?
I love
they just
that.
Need to be happy and learning.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what a great mission, to just bring that peace to everyone, and people don't have to feel bad about what direction they choose to go in. And some families will split their kids, and I'll have some in traditional school and some homeschooled as well.
Correct. And I do have some clients that are like that, usually it's somebody maybe with a larger family. And they'll find that some of the children do better in the public school setting, and that's where they have them. And then some of the children do better being homeschooled, and so that's where they have them. So we support those who are homeschooling. We do have a Facebook group actually for that called Homeschooling Special Needs Kids. And again, it has our logo on the group, but and that group's about 3,500 people. And so we assist and support parents there with information and advice. And Payson does have on staff also an educational consultant who helps families. She's a certified special education teacher, Amy. And Amy is amazing because she also homeschools her own children with exceptional needs. So she's very well versed. And she's amazing. So we're so excited that she's on staff with us, helping with our homeschooling families.
That's awesome. So let's get into your program, your parent training course. You offer an IEP and a 504. I think you have another couple of them, but I think those are the most relevant to our listeners. So can you talk about the difference between an IEP and a 504?
It's probably one of the most common things that come up in my group, but it comes up so often. So we have a lot of people who will join the group because, like I said, that's the IEP/504 assistance group, right? And so people come in and they're like, hey, my kid, they don't have special education. They only have a 504. And it's like, okay, so they still kind of have special education. It's just they have accommodations. And it's important for people to understand too, because a lot of the parents come into the group and what they're finding is, or what I tend to find why they're coming to my group, is they're having a hard time getting the 504 enforced. And so what I find is it's difficult for enforcement under a section 504. And that's partially because the procedural safeguards, right? The way we fight back as parents for that is really determined by your local school district. So you have to ask your local school district for whatever the procedural safeguards for section 504 are, and then you have to look at them. The only one guaranteed to you under section 504 is due process. And so due process, parents can do due process on their own, but many find it intimidating. They wouldn't even attempt to do it on their own. And I think schools tend to know that, and they take advantage of it.
And what is due process?
So due process is an administrative law hearing that you have before a judge. Typically, the school district will bring their school district attorney. So you as the parent are then facing the school district attorney. And then you have to present your case on whatever it is that you're arguing, which typically is a denial of FAPE. So a denial of a free, appropriate public education.
And so the IEP, will you go into what that is?
Yeah, well, so what's nice about the IEP versus the 504, so for instance, under 504, the schools don't have to involve the parents in the development of the 504. That really shocks a lot of people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know, they're like, what? Seriously? They don't have to. It's not in the law. Okay. And so it is considered best practices to involve the parent, but it's not required. And we do get some people come to my group who the school has made the 504 without parental input, or changed the 504 without parental input. And they're confused and upset about what's going on. And we have to explain to them, the school is allowed to do that under section 504. Under IDEA and IEP, there is requirements for parental involvement in a couple of the different statutes. So that's like one important difference between the 504 and the IEP. Also in the testing procedures for a 504 versus an IEP, when people come to the group and they're like, oh, I'm looking to get my child a 504, we're like, no, don't do that. I want you to have and ask to have them assessed for special education services under IDEA. And I said, because under IDEA, it's clearly defined what the procedures are for an evaluation, okay? But under Section 504, it's not. It just says the child should be evaluated, and then doesn't mention anything else about the evaluation criteria, really. I mean, it's very minimal, the requirements that are listed there. And so I often see too, schools will give a 504 with only a doctor's note, and that's not proper procedure either. The child should still be assessed by the school, because that's what it's determined that's needed by FAPE, along with seeing to make sure the child isn't improperly placed, right? That they're given a 504 instead of an IEP. So that's another issue that I tend to see with 504s. I don't know, there's kind of like a few other things that'll come to mind, I'm sure, in a minute, but like those are some big differences though, I would say are the most common that come up where there's a misunderstanding between the 504 and an IEP. Oh, wait a minute. So the other important thing, a 504 can have related services. All right, so that's another point of confusion. They can have related services. You can have speech therapy, you can have OT, PT, etc. But there should not be any goals attached to it, because there's no requirements to come back and revisit on a timely basis under Section 504, but there is under an IEP. So that's another important thing, because we'll see sometimes states will try to shove goals into a 504 that's really not proper. The child should then have an IEP.
Interesting. So when you, in your training, what can a parent expect to get if they purchased your training?
Yes, so our training program actually is still in progress. I'm writing the training program, and it's a massive training program. It's on the level of COPAS, that's the Council of Parent Attorneys, Parent Advocates and Attorneys. And so COPA has seat 1, seat 2, and seat 3. And so my program is similar in that we cover a lot of the same topics of information, but I do it in a topical fashion. So my course is designed very differently from other advocacy courses. But I do think that lends it better to those who say have learning disabilities. You know, I myself have ADHD. It's hard for me to kind of shift between topic to topic. I don't learn best in that fashion. So in the training program, that's the way the training program is built. I teach the training program in a topic-based fashion. So when I tell you things about a topic, I essentially tell you everything that I know about that topic. And then we move on and discuss another topic. So for instance, the very first part of our training program actually is internet research, which a lot of people find interesting. And I've even had some people who do internet research for a living take this course. And even they were fascinated because I taught them some information and tricks on internet research they weren't even aware of. But I think knowing how to research the internet and how to find appropriate information is critically important. You don't want to do what I've had a parent tell me one time, which was I went to an IEP meeting and I said, but Wright's Law said, and then told the IEP team, and they were like, but they didn't care. And I go, that's because you said Wright's Law said. That's not an appropriate place to cite for information. The law statute Wright's Law mentions in that post, on that webpage, that is an appropriate thing to cite, right? But not to say Wright's Law itself said. And so this is all some of the things that I cover about finding information, citing appropriate information. And then the next part is jargon. So educational jargon, there's a lot of it. There's a whole lot of educational jargon. And I feel like it's critically important for parents to know that information. And that's because if you don't know the educational jargon, I think it's the fastest way to give yourself away that you may not know things. So one of the easiest ways to sound like you maybe know more than you do is to be up on that educational lingo, right? And be able to know that during an IEP meeting. And you're like, no, I got everything that you said. and then by the way, and then be able to speak at their same level. So I found that was critically important when I was advocating medically for my kids. Like, I had to learn medical jargon so that I could then speak to the doctors and nurses on their level. So that way they would then take me seriously, and I'm not just the parent who's telling them things. They now look at me, and I would even have some of them ask me, like, are you a nurse or a doctor? And I'm like, no, I'm smart enough I could have been, but that's just not what I decided to study in school, But that was the thing. They then took me very seriously, though, because they knew that obviously I knew something, and they wanted to hear what I had to say. I don't know. I think it makes them people more receptive to hear what you're saying.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So we start off with that, and then we just talk about like FAPE. I'll tell you everything I know about FAPE and then some. And yeah, I just sort of move people right through the course, topic by topic. And then the first part of our course is released, and it's 16 units. We found it takes people 2 months to move through the information if you're moving through it at a good pace. It is a course. It's not just a training program. It is a course. It's about 167 written pages if you printed it all out. And I have over 600 references because my background is research science. So I wrote the course the way I would write a research paper. And so there's a lot of references to the material that I pull. So this way, it's not just me telling you this information. You can see the sources where I pulled all of the information.
That is incredible. You have put so much time and energy into this, which is amazing that, people today will be able to have this information at their fingertips and be able to speak wisely at an IEP meeting and not feel intimidated by the administration and the teachers who are in IEP meetings all day long and can very often intimidate the parents to not ask for what they need or want.
Yep, exactly. Well, the first set of people who've gone through the program, that first part of the program is more equivalent to COPA Seat 1. And the other thing too is my program, it's besides the written text, we have videos, there's audio, there's exams. So, there's tests. Like I said, this is a course that you take. And so when you get done through the course, and then also it comes with a private Facebook group too. So that if you have questions about the course, I address them there. Yeah. But it's nice because the people who have taken the course and have gone through this first part of the course have come back and have told me that they're already utilizing the information during IEP meetings, that they feel more confident, that they're now actually starting to help others advocate. So they're starting to help their friends. And that one of them even said that the school district's starting to refer parents to them so they can start helping them, So I'm like, yay, that's perfect. That's all the things that I'm wanting to hear, because that to me is the purpose of the training program.
Sorry. So this can be a career for a parent as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Complete the training program.
Absolutely. We're fortunate in the fact that I do have that very large Facebook group. So the people who are finishing up this course, I take them on as moderators in my group. And so I work with them, we'll call it behind the scenes, to help them with addressing questions that are posted to the group. And so again, this allows them to take information that they're learning, and now they get to exercise that information that they're learning with a practical application, right? We're answering and addressing these problems that are being posted to our group for the parents who are seeking information. And so I feel like utilizing things that you've learned really is the best way for you to truly just kind of incorporate what you've learned. And that's what I offer, is this, kind of mentorship and training as part of the program, so that these parents can then learn to utilize this information. I feel like most training programs kind of fall on their face in the fact they're too short. And you learn enough that you understand there's more rights, you have more rights, but you don't utilize the information in a practical manner, and you don't utilize it often enough that if you get flustered during an IEP meeting, that you're not frozen in that moment. Okay. And so allowing people to kind of exercise and utilize that information, I think really helps them to be able to be more confident in that moment they're in an IEP meeting and are flustered.
How do you have time to do all this?
I don't sleep. No, there is some truth to that, actually. Like I said, I have ADHD myself. I suffer from insomnia. And so years ago, actually, after I was still learning information, part of what I was doing is when I was learning information, I'd spend 1 to 3 hours at night researching. This is what I did, So I would sit and research. And then as I joined Facebook groups, I started helping in other groups, like to help people with advocacy and answering questions. And then after one of the admins in a group got mad at me and they kicked me out, I went and formed my own group. And so that's essentially how my group came into being.
Oh, wow.
Because I was kicked out of another one. But really, it was the best thing they ever could have done for me, because it forced me to kind of go out and then start, like me now being in charge and running the group and not being under someone else's wing, right? And so my feeling is, and the thing that I tell the people in my group is, the group that we run, we offer free help and assistance in there. So if you post something in there, we help you for free. Like, that's no issue. We do offer advocacy services, because we have our low-cost advocacy services, but that kind of came about later because we were having these people come in and we were helping with advocacy, but I didn't have like an organized way in which I was doing it. And so I decided that I needed to form a nonprofit, because I was sort of was working in all these different areas essentially related to education. And so if we formed a nonprofit, and I could be like the umbrella to everything I'm doing related to education, the homeschooling, helping people who have like twice exceptional children, along with those with learning disabilities, and then I'm like, if I can just have one organization to handle all of that, which is how the nonprofit came into being. And so, so we still answer questions in that group for free. We help people all the time. I have learning guides. That group is packed with information and resources that I have gathered. That group is almost 6 years old. So it's information and resources I've gathered over the last 5 to 6 years. And so you can learn a lot just by lurking. I have a lot of lurkers in that group, which is fine. I'm glad they're there, because they come back and what they're doing is they're reading the information and the answers in that group and learning. And then I know, because we'll have people post sometimes talking about how they've learned information and how they've been able to apply it at an IEP meeting they have. But now they have some other issue. So we answer that question, right? So it's great to see that, that group is doing what it's supposed to be doing, which is we're training people. People are learning. And as they're learning, they sort of move up. Sometimes I wind up kind of graduating people out of my group because they now moved on and they've started their own advocacy agency. So I know that group over the years, we've helped spawn at least 4 advocacy agencies, along with at least 8 professional advocates that I'm aware of over the years. So I think that's awesome.
That is awesome. That is so amazing. So can you tell us again, what is the best way to get in contact with you or your group?
Yes. So the best way really to get in contact with me is honestly, just go to payson.org or our website. And then there we have a contact form, so you can fill it out. Also, finding us on Facebook, so joining one of our Facebook groups, it's a great way to get in contact with us there. Sometimes we'll have people post literally a post that says, can one of the admins contact me? Sure, we can do that. It's not a problem. So Yeah, there's a lot of ways potentially people can get in contact with this. And also our main business line, we are based out of Phoenix, Arizona. So you can call our main business line, which is 480-469-7505. And then typically I'm the one who answers the phone. So you'll get to talk to me.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Michelle, for taking the time to share with us just a little sprinkle of your expertise. And look forward to having you on the show again, sharing some other information to our listeners.
Absolutely would love to do that.